Hello everyone and welcome to another Q&A video from 3dgamingman.com. I'm Rodney Reynolds and today I'm going to be detailing some of the things you should be looking for when you're going to purchase a case. Now this is a buyer's guide of sorts. I'll just be detailing things like, for example, form versus function, your budget, the application, what you can fit on the inside, and so on. Okay, so let's begin. And I'm going to make, or try to make, a rather light video on a very serious topic because, you know, selecting a case is pretty darn serious. It is when you think about it. It is the house that everything lives in, right? So let's begin. Okay, so you want to figure out all the hardware first. Everything. I know. You just can't go out and pick a case and then pray to God that everything's going to fit inside of it. That would be just ridiculous. And also, what's the purpose of the case? You know, what application will you be using it for? In other words, if you're building a hardcore gaming setup with a couple of video cards and water cooling and lots of drives, etc., you're going to need a fairly robust case to accommodate it all, right? Probably something that has more function than style. Although, you know, you can get function and style in cases these days. If, for example, you're, building a home theater PC setup, well, you might want, a different kind of case, a slim case that looks sexy. Maybe you are going to LAN parties. That's, again, a different case. Maybe something, that's compact and has a handle. As well, maybe you want a quiet build, and then you would go with a case that has acoustic dampening material on the inside and passive cooling. Now, as for an office computer case, well, just forget about that, because that's all about practicality and affordability, and I'm not focusing on that in this video. Budget, that's next. We are all on one, unless we are filthy rich or we've just won the lottery. If you're either of those, my contact information is below. So go ahead and get a case that you can afford. I mean, there's no sense, in spending tons of extra money on something that you don't need, because you can pour those funds into something that you do need. Like, for example, if you're building a gaming rig, put the money into a better video card or another video card, or maybe you can have a couple of video cards. Now, since we're talking budget, whatever you do, please don't do this. Do not go out and buy a cheap power supply. It is literally one of the most important components in your computer system. Get one that is brand name and comes with an excellent warranty. Form versus function. Now, this is a big one. It's very important to get a case that's both stylish, something that you can look at, and also one that's functional. Don't go for a case that's all about the looks, nor a case that's all about the features. Get something that you're going to be able to admire for a long time, because if you do it right, it's something that you'll be happy with for years and just maybe impress your friends at the same time. Now, case material is probably something that most of us do not have at the very top of our list, because most cases these days are comprised of steel and plastic and mesh, which is fine for most of us as long as the build quality is decent. Of course, the other option is aluminum cases. Sometimes they come with tempered glass side panels and all that kind of fantastic stuff. They look brilliant, but they are expensive as well. They're cooler and generally more lightweight than steel cases, so just keep that in mind. Now, most of today's cases will have no problem accommodating a couple of 2.5-inch and a couple of 3.5-inch drives on the inside, of course, unless it's a mini ITX case or something that's super small, but just check to be sure. Now, remember, many of today's cases do not have any external 5.25-inch drive bays for installing optical disc drives. That might be a concern for some. To be honest, I don't really care myself, because it means more space on the inside of the case for fans, water cooling support, longer video cards, internal drives, and so on. Also consider a case that has a toolless drive design, because it will make removing and installing drives a snap. Okay, so let's get cool here and start talking about fans and filters. Now, of course, having lots of fans or provision for them and removable dust filters on the intake fans is crucial. Typically, having at least one fan at the front intaking cool air, another couple at the top exhausting the warm air, one at the back also exhausting, and ideally one at the bottom intaking cool air is the best setup for most situations. Now, the sizes of the fans depend on which case you select, but generally 120mm fans and larger provide more effective cooling. Also keep in mind that there are different fans for different uses. Like, for example, if possible, use high static pressure fans in areas where space is limited, like radiators and heat sinks. Obviously, it's paramount to keep the inside of the case cool at all times, but you also need to keep the dust out. Connections, buttons, and status LEDs are important, of course, and the position of them. Let's say, for example, that you have the case on the floor. The best place for the ports and the buttons in that scenario would be at the top for easy access. If, however, your case is on your desk, you might want to have them on the front instead. Also, get a case that has enough ports for your particular application, like audio jacks and the latest USB ports. Now, some prefer reset and power buttons that are hidden. It's great if you have kids, let me tell you. If you're building a home theater PC setup, then maybe an integrated card reader or an LCD screen is important to you. Panels, side, front, and top. They are sometimes overlooked, but play a critical role. Like, for example, some cases have acoustic dampening material in them, right? And that's pretty important if you're building a quiet computer system. Others have ventilation, windows, but get what best suits your needs. Let's say you're building a gaming rig. In that case, is a window more important than a fan on the side panel to you? Maybe, maybe not. A window will, of course, showcase all that cool hardware on the inside, but a fan would provide additional cooling, although there are cases out there these days that you can get the window and the fan on the same panel, so that's the best of both worlds. But again, it's your decision. Now, at the top and front panels, well, they should accommodate a number of fans and or radiators if you're considering building a pretty hardcore system. Moving right along to the rear of the case, which is an area that's not seen a lot, but it's pretty darn important. Typically, you want to make sure the install location for the power supply is at the bottom, since you don't want it overheating, because usually if it's at the top, well, it's going to get a little bit warmer, although if you have adequate case ventilation, that shouldn't be a big deal. Now, the number of expansion slots will vary, but generally 7 or more is recommended, and a toolless design for them is great. Honestly, though, thumb screws work the best overall. Also, some cases have extra ventilation, rubber grommets for routing water cooling tubes through, provision for a lock so you can secure the side panel, an LED light or illumination at the back, good for dark areas, and thankfully most non-proprietary cases these days will include thumb screws on the side panels for easy access to the inside of the case. Now we're getting into the good stuff, the inside of the case, where you install all of that awesome hardware. Now, in most situations, you'll want to get a case that's spacious, and just a quick reminder, check the dimensions of the hardware you will be installing before purchasing the case, because it will save you a lot of frustration and money. This goes without saying, but make sure that you have enough space on the inside to install everything, like, for example, a video card or a number of video cards, the cooler, the power supply, and other items, because you will be doing a dough. Now, maybe you're into water cooling, which could require a bit more space for a rad or a number of rads, a pump, a tank, etc. Also consider the video card and power supply length, as well as the cooler height. In a typical gaming build, you'll want a case that can accommodate a 300mm or larger video card and power supply, and a cooler that's 160mm or taller in height. Now, I'm not sure if I should mention this, removable motherboard trays. They are awesome, but very rare these days, but it is an option. Also, ensuring that there's a large hole on the motherboard tray for the cooler's retention plate will make installation easier and more convenient. As well, cable management, super important for both looks and especially if you have a window, as well as air circulation. So be sure there's lots of holes on the motherboard tray to route them through. As well, there should be ample space behind the motherboard tray and the side panel. I'd recommend at least 15mm so you're not too cramped. Last but not least, and this depends on the application, fairly tall feet are preferred to allow the bottom fan or fans to do the job and intake cool air. And if placed on a desk, rubber feet are preferred to prevent scratching the surface, and they will also cut down on vibrations. Well, like all good things, they must come to an end, and that's the end of this Q&A video. But before I leave you all alone and stranded, let's have a discussion about this particular topic. What are the most important things to you when selecting a case? Is it looks? Is it function? What exactly is it? You can comment below. Remember, if you like this video, thumb it up, share, and if you have a question for me, let me know.